And I mean, it's public property. So, I mean, that'd be like me like drilling for oil like in a state park. It's my oil now. I can't do that. Hey, folks, it is November the 3rd, Election Day. And so on Google Classroom, I provided a few links for you. The first two are to the National Archives. That is where the federal government provides official documents that have to do with U.S. history and civics and stuff like that. And the first one has to do with U.S. Constitution. At the class here, just go over Article 2, Section 1, which has to do with how presidents are elected into office. And we're going to discuss that right now. And so, all right, folks. So who actually decides or who actually votes on who's the president of the United States? Yeah, go ahead.
Senators.
Electoral college.
Yeah. So see, the senators pick who the electors are, and electors. So electoral college, you saw, wasn't in the Constitution, but electors are based on our population and our senators, and each state gets a free one. And so you see some states are filled with electors because they have a high population. Some of them only have the minimum, which is 3, because their population's so low. So even though electoral college isn't in the Constitution, it's a tradition. It's a tradition that we call this collection of the electors. We have other traditions in the federal system as well that's not in the Constitution. Article 3 has to do with the Supreme Court, but it only says you really need 1 Supreme Court justice, not 9. We have 9 though, because we want enough to have like an even view and then a tiebreaker of the legality of laws throughout the land, the constitutionality of it. So as far as even their power, their ability to determine what's constitutional and unconstitutional, how it's defined, is found through its own court rulings. It's not even found in the Constitution. So there's some things we do have that stuck around traditionally in America. So referring back to that quote, Constitution is there so that the majority cannot harm the minority. The minority in this case are these little states. So we see the majority of the U.S. citizenry live along the coast, or like Florida, Texas, California, New York, and so on. But if we had a popular vote, which some people are calling for, it'd take a constitutional amendment to do so. If it was based on popularity, then really it would be the major cities within these states even that would choose who the president would be. LA, Houston, Dallas, Illinois, New York City, Miami.
Chicago, that's why Illinois is 20. And Pittsburgh, that's why Pennsylvania is 20.
Yeah,
New York City, because that's why New York has 29. All the big cities.
Well, the point is, there's major cities. The point is that yes, the majority of U.S. citizens would pick, but the most of those citizens would be people who lived in cities along coast. And the minority, the people who live in the middle of America and in rural America,
Montana, South Dakota, North Dakota,
would lose their say-so in the system. Yes, Timothy?
Wouldn't that also change politics in a way of making them all political cities and everyone else be flat out ignored at that point?
Yeah. So when they campaign, they would only go to the cities and try to convince the city bloc. This is what ancient Rome, one of its problems was the Republic. And Madison was a historian. So he studied ancient Greeks, like when we were talking about Greek democracy. But one of the problems with the Roman Republic is you could only vote in Rome. And most people could not make it to Rome to vote. And so what they would do is they would just campaign in Rome, and they would literally buy off the Roman peasants to vote for them. And they were afraid of having something like this happen again in America. And that could easily happen today. 1 second, Bryce. So, I mean, it's like another question, like they wanted people to have access to voting too. Why do we vote on Tuesdays? Does anybody know? Why do we vote on Tuesdays?
That is a good question.
We vote on Tuesdays because in the 13 original states, there were blue laws. One of the blue laws are like usually laws that have to do with like church and religion and stuff.
It's Sunday.
On Sunday, you couldn't travel on the Sabbath. Monday, it might take all Monday for some farmers to get in a buggy or to walk to town to go vote. So Monday was a travel day to get to the booths. And then you could vote on Tuesday. And then after that, you come back home.
So
And we
why
just
not
kept it.
Wednesday or Sunday? Why not Wednesday or Thursday?
Friday.
I don't know.
What else Saturday?
I don't know. But that's why they didn't choose Sunday or Monday.
Now there
Or
are
Saturday.
there are the red and blue states, but there's also the swing states. Right now, there's currently 62 swing states in America: Arizona, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, and I think Georgia.
Well, here's the thing, though.
Florida.
Here's the thing, though. Every year, though, you'll find that political parties, usually the opposition party, says that more states are in play than that. And so usually you don't find out what a swing state is until after the elections. Because if you because sometimes you might find, oh, never mind, they went like they did the past few times. But yeah, it's one of those things that we're going to have to see if the polling is correct this time. Because it wasn't correct last time, right? Like last time, it was like way off. And some say it has to do with the way they were collecting samples, silent voters, stuff like that. We'll have to see how this time it plays out.
And
Um,
Texas is currently red, but it's bleeding blue.
Well, and we'll see. Throughout like the first half of my life, Texas was usually Democrat. It was Southern Democrat. So there's a lot of people who really don't have a preference in Texas. As far as a lot of our laws are more middle ground than people think. Here, 1 second, Bryson had a question. What were we gonna say, Bryson?
I was just going back to the whole Roman democracy thing. Wasn't the only factors that you could vote that if you were a Roman-born person, you were a man, you were a woman, you had to own one. So it was like a small, very, very small percentage.
It expanded over time. It expanded because it would expand to non-landowners. It would also eventually expand to non-Romans. They would allow Germanic barbarians to vote too. They would allow people throughout all the provinces. And so just like America, voting rights expanded in the Roman Republic. But originally in the ancient Roman Republic, before it was an empire, it wasn't expanded. And yeah, it was pretty much just people who lived in Rome got a chance to vote. But Roman citizens who were not landowners could vote as long as they were actual Romans. Hey, what you got, Timothy?
I believe that they said that the polls last time were mostly taken, like the prediction polls were mostly taken in California, Pennsylvania, and New York only. And the rest of them were pretty much ignored.
That was not very enough. We'll have to see how this goes. I mean, I know, like already, like Smith County, like I think a week ago, had already had as many early voters as all of Smith County's voters in 2016. Texas has already way surpassed how many people voted in 2016 before today. So a lot of states, a lot of people are very motivated. That's weird because in America, it's something like normally only like a small percentage, less than 10% of people who are able to vote actually vote in America. We're pretty lazy about it. You go to places like after Iraq was liberated, when they had their first votes, they'd had to have them basically in fortresses. And when people voted, to make sure they didn't have voter fraud, they put this ink that'd stay on your finger for a few days. And they'd have to use it to put their fingerprint on a ballot. And when they go home, later on, a jihadi would find out who's got purple on their fingers. All right, kill that one, kill that one, kill that one. These people were doing this at the risk of their own life. And they would have voter turnout of over 90% anyway. So it goes to show this is something that it's really important. I know like other folks have talked to y'all about it, but it has more power than you think, you know? Like a lot of people don't realize it. All right. So, but we were talking about expansion of the vote. So originally, the 13 colonies was comprised of people mostly from England, the Netherlands, you had the Dutch, and, you had some Scots, Irish, a few French, and a few like people from other parts of Europe. And of course, you had enslaved and free Africans. But the people who comprised of the government, and the people who could vote were landowning males. And so, and of course, they were also, well, they were like me, pretty white, about transparent. But we're going to see that America is able to amend its constitution. The constitution was made with the ability to change it, change even when it came to selecting who's president. And we have 4 laws here that show just how that works out. So could you open up your constitution and see, like, what was the 15th Amendment, in case you don't remember from last year?
We don't remember that first thing.
Well, like 14th, 15th, 16th were the Civil War amendments.
I found the 15th.
All right, what is it?
Section 1. The right of citizens of the United States to vote shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or India by other states on race, color, or previous conviction or stereotype.
Does it say?
Yes. And in a way to abbreviate it, what this did is this amendment allowed all male citizens the right to vote for the president or for any general election, right? So, and so this was made specifically when they put it on the debate floor. It wasn't that they were trying to get all citizens who were male to vote, because they assumed that was like that. They were trying to do this for people who were former slaves. They were saying, if you used to be a slave, you can now vote. Because according to the Constitution, who gets to vote is actually up to the states. But the Constitution is supreme law of land, so it can set boundaries. So the states can decide who can vote, but you have to make sure all male citizens have that right. They can limit that right somehow.
Yeah.
Like if you're a felon or something like that. If you're a murderer and you get out of jail, you can't just step out of jail and vote for a president in most states. Well, all states, right? Some states have talked about getting rid of that. All right. Can somebody look up the 19th Amendment?
I already know it.
Yeah, you should. All right, what is it?
Women's right to vote.
Yeah,
Because
women's right to vote.
It's easy to memorize because the amendment was made in 1919. When women were allowed to vote.
So here we had, now women can vote. So here you had, the cool thing is about America is there was a war where a lot of American citizens died to help this happen. With the 19th Amendment, you had Congress, and it had to be a super majority of Congress proposed this. And then 3/4 of states, where almost entirely men could vote, voted for women to have the right to vote. Now, there's another way to amend the Constitution as well. What's it called? The Convention of States. That one's never been done before. And that's where the states get together. They hold like a little Congress of just the states, and they decide how to amend the Constitution. Can't really get states to agree on anything, so that's never happened before. But usually you have Congress propose it, and then the states ratify it. Hey, what about 24?
Powers of Congress?
Huh? Something else I'm looking for. Yes, Caitlin?
The right of citizens of the United States to vote in any primary or other election for president or vice president, for electors for president or vice president, or for senator or representative in Congress shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or any state by reason of failure to pay any poll tax or other tax.
Yes, there we go. Vote primaries and no poll taxes. So there's 2 parts to this. So the first part is this. Primaries. Primaries are where political parties decide who their candidate is. So they're saying it can't be, the Democrat and Republican candidates can't be picked in a back room by like rich guys with cigars. It has to be something where the people get to pick who's going to lead that party. The second part is poll taxes. You can't have tests to see whether somebody is illiterate or can't pay a tax or racially have some kind of way to stop them from voting. So it's supposed to go against Jim Crow laws, right? So what we see is a trend. Expansion of the right, expansion of the right, expansion of the right, and stopping its hindrance. What about the 26th?
right to vote as long as you're a citizen and over the age of 18.
So yeah, 18 plus can vote.
What if
So-
you turn 18 on election day?
On election day, it's a good question. I would imagine you can because you are 18 while you're casting the ballot.
You have to get voted for.
Yeah, you do have to get registered. And so
Most
I'm not
people-
sure how registration would work because,
Most people are automatically registered if they have a license.
yeah, that's how I've always done it. I've never actually registered. I just do my license and I like check a little box and I got my, then like when I go vote, I hand them the license.
I have a question.
They give me my little ticket thing and I go to the machine. Yeah.
For like people who go into like the military at like 16 and stuff, where does it come from that they're allowed to vote? What law is that?
They can't. They gotta be 18.
I was
So
told-
yeah, you
I was
can.
told they're in the military, under the age of 18, you still allowed to vote, right?
I've never seen it. Yeah. I was actually, I was of age. I was 19 when it was time to vote in the 2000 election. And we didn't get to vote though. We were like deployed. And so we never got ballots. And so we're like, none of us, like a couple thousand guys didn't get to vote. So I don't know. It's never come up. We only had like a couple of guys who were under 18 though. It wasn't that common back then. I don't know if it's common now. So I don't know. It doesn't make sense though. It's not fair. But there's a lot of loopholes to get somebody who's like 17 in. Because parents have to sign off on it. They still have to complete high school and all this other stuff. They don't let you drop out to join like the old days and stuff. So,
And the good old days.
oh, the good old days. Hey,
You were around.
but yeah, so the right to vote's expanded. I mean, remember, America's not a democracy, but we have many democratic elements. And so like expanding that throughout. All right, I'm going to show you this little infographic I got from some .gov site. And then we'll have you do something for me. All right, so you read a little bit about this. So the path to presidency. So first, you have to be a natural-born citizen. And so natural-born citizen means that one or more of your parents were a U.S. citizen when you were born. There's a lot of military bases that are overseas, and a lot of those military bases allow family members to live there. And so you can have like a husband and a wife overseas. They have a baby. Now their child's a natural-born citizen, even though they might be born in, say, like Japan or Italy or a lot of other places. Yeah, so they still qualify as being able to be president. Minimum age of 35 years. So they have some life experience. Must be within the U.S. for 14 years. So if they were like educated abroad or something like that, they still had to be home long enough to learn a little bit about America firsthand. Then we have the parties decide who they're going to have run for their party as president. So we saw that this time around, the Republicans had an easy pick because usually a party sticks with its incumbent. So we had Donald Trump, and he kept his vice presidential pick, Mike Pence. The Democrats this time, however, had to choose a candidate since they didn't have an incumbent. And so they had many candidates come up and all say that they wanted to run as the Democratic Party president. And so then they have to campaign with it and like let their party know why they'll be the best person for their party. And then after that, you have two modes of picking out who's going to be in charge of, or who's going to be that candidate. You have primary, which is pretty easy. It's just a regular old vote. And then you have caucuses. Each state gets to pick whether they're going to have a caucus or a primary. In fact, sometimes it's not even states. It's more like a county. And so a caucus is more like where you have people get together, they debate, and they try to, it's almost like a show of hands. You can have people kind of like choose one side of a room or another in some caucuses. It's a very chaotic, disorganized way to select, but it's very traditional in some places. And here you can have some people who come in and they're undecided, and you'll have one candidate or another try to talk the people to choose them. So it's kind of open as far as like a big open debate. Then you have the national conventions. And so the party through these primary and caucus has decided who their candidate's going to be. The candidate then chooses a vice presidential candidate from their party, usually somebody they ran against, but not always. It's very tactical to pick somebody who's going to pull in votes that you wouldn't pull in yourself. So it might be someone from a different part of the country or a different like class or something like that. And then they go to campaign to the general population saying why they should be a president. There, of course, are debates. They keep on campaigning through early elections and up until election day, the general election. And so this year, like I said, has had a lot of early voting, some of it electronic, some of it through the mail. A lot of our voting, however, comes in today. It's very traditional. It's kind of difficult for a lot of people because they have to work or go to school. And so usually a lot of this voting will carry on late into the evening. Sometimes you won't hear back about a state's voting until midnight or even the next day. And it could be possible, some states, it might take a week or so because of all the mail-in ballots due to COVID. And so we're going to have to see how this goes. So there's a slight possibility we won't know who president is when we wake up tomorrow. But if it's a landslide for one candidate or another, it's going to be a pretty safe bet. As we've already seen, we have the Electoral College. There's 538 total. And like you read in the Constitution, if there's a tie, Congress has to come up with delegates who are going to break that tie. But normally, if somebody gets 270, they have the most Electoral College votes and they're president. And then in January, we have inauguration where they take the oath of office. They give a nice little speech and all that good stuff. And they have the next 4 years to be president. If it's too close, more than likely, it could be like when Bush first won. It could go to the courts. But if one side's if it's a lopsided victory for one of the candidates, hopefully it'll be over pretty quickly and we can move on. Yeah.
One election in around 1880s or 1870s,
Mhm.
it was perfectly split.
Yes.
And they actually had to go to one guy in the court and they told him to vote for either or.
Well, I mean, you had a split with Harrison, right? Was it Harrison? Well, anyways, it ended Reconstruction. It was like, yeah, and that's why we say Reconstruction ended in 77, because it was after the election date. Next year, they finally figured out who was going to be president. And the Republicans said, we'll pull the troops out of the South and end Reconstruction if you let us be president. And they were like, Democrats were like, okay, yeah, we'll let you be president if you get the troops out. So that ended Reconstruction, and then you had a big growth in like Jim Crow laws and stuff like that. So presidency is very important. People were willing to do a lot of things, even back then when presidents didn't even do that much. All right, folks, we're going to go ahead and end the lecture for today, and then we have a little activity for you who are in the class. Can't really do it with y'all who are online. But just know when we come back on Thursday, we're going to go back over the second half of that Hayek article. And then Friday, we'll see what we do then. But I'll talk to you later, kids. All right, so